When we say that Shakespeare is one of the world's greatest dramatists, it is also worth remembering that his drama Hamlet is perhaps the most frequently discussed, most elaborately discussed dramas in the entire world. As literary theory advances even further, and as we use discoveries from anthropology and a varied number of other sciences, we come to a better understanding of this beautiful, wonderful drama. Today, we will talk about Hamlet from its sources, from its origins, and from its simplest aspects to some of the most recent developments in the area. Welcome to this program. Today, we have with us Professor Prakasham, who is a retired professor from our university, and he has kindly consented to discuss this wonderful drama with us. We will be, as I said, looking at some of the most recent developments in the drama, as well as the basic points that any drama goer, any reader would look at in this drama.
We are going to discuss Hamlet. To see that even those people who have not gone through this play understand what we are saying, I would like to give a brief summary of this 5-act play. The play begins with the information that the senior Hamlet, King of Denmark, is no more. He died in his sleep. And Hamlet, who was a student of philosophy, has come back to Denmark. He suspects something had gone wrong, because his mother, within a month or two of his father's death, married his uncle, King Claudius. This haste Hamlet doesn't like. He even calls it incest. King Claudius had as a very supporting prime minister Polonius. He has a beautiful daughter, Ophelia, and Hamlet is fond of her. Queen Gertrude is Hamlet's mother. She was the queen when his father was alive. She is the queen even now. The play starts with this background, and then suddenly one night the senior Hamlet's ghost appears before Prince Hamlet and tells him that he was killed when he was sleeping in the garden by his uncle, and he says, "Avenge by death," but adds, "Don't punish your mother, because she is not responsible for this. It is your uncle. Avenge by death." So that becomes the central part of the play, how to avenge his father's death. Very important thing here is, he was sleeping when he was killed. That means he did not have time to repent for his sins. That is why you can call it unprepared death. If someone is prepared for death, he prays and repents for his sins and all that. So later you get to know that he says, "I am in a place where I am paying for my sins because I was not allowed to repent for my sins." And that is how the whole thing comes. But being a student of philosophy, Hamlet wonders whether the ghost was giving the correct information. So he wanted to test whether his uncle had really killed his father. For that he gets a play enacted, The Murder of Gonzabo. On that base of the play, he gets to confirm his doubts. Yes, my uncle killed him. A very interesting thing happens here. The king gets disturbed by the play because he is reminded of his own crime. He goes towards his chamber. On the way, he kneels before cross, tries to pray, and he says heavens would punish him for his crime. Hamlet comes that way and he says, now is the time I can kill him. He is praying and his head is down. But suddenly he remembers that his father was killed when he was sleeping. Result was his father did not go to heaven. If he kills his uncle now when he is praying, his uncle will go to heaven. So he says, no, this should not happen. He really says, a villain kills my father. He is about his uncle. And I kill him when he is praying. This is not fair. So here I always tell people, it is not really killing Claudius that is important. It is killing Claudius who killed his senior Hamlet when he was sleeping. King Claudius stole the throne, but Prince Hamlet is not so much worried about the throne. He is worried about the unprepared death given to his father. So he did not want to kill his uncle who was praying. So he leaves him alone and goes to his mother's chamber. And this Polonius, the prime minister, is a kind of nosy character. He wanted to keep an eye on Hamlet and report back to the king. So he hides behind curtains and he overhears the conversation between mother and son. At one stage, Hamlet becomes very angry with his mother. He was very angry with her anyway, because after his father's death, she hurriedly married his uncle, who, according to Hamlet, is a useless fellow, very bad fellow. At one stage, she shouts aloud, she yells, she cries, and Polonius also cries, help, help. Thinking that it was his uncle behind the curtain, Hamlet stabs him. Then he says it is Polonius. So all this goes to the knowledge of the king. And king asks him, where is Polonius? He says, he is somewhere else. He is at the dinner. What do you mean by dinner? The worms are eating him. Their dinner. So anyway, King Claudius decides to send Hamlet away to England to get him killed there. And he escapes. Comes back. Meanwhile, Polonius' son Laertes also comes back. In the intervening period, Ophelia, who was very much loved by Hamlet, was misused by Claudius and Polonius to spy on him. So he was angry with her. He just spurns her, becomes hostile to her. And then she becomes sad and she had a drowning death. But we will discuss this in detail about her death and the controversies on that later. So when Laertes comes, he had already known about his father's death, and suddenly Queen Gertrude comes and tells him, your sister drowned. She had a drowning death. And that is a double stroke, father's death and sister's death. And meanwhile, Hamlet comes back from England. He has a very interesting scene with the gravedigger. And the gravedigger, when he asks him, who is this grave for? A man or a woman? A gravedigger says, neither, sir. What do you mean? It was a woman when she was alive. Now it is only body. The body is neither man or woman. That kind of very interesting, philosophically strong scene is created. That is gravedigger scene. And after some time, Ophelia's body is brought there to be buried. At the burial scene, Laertes and Hamlet have a kind of quarrel. Laertes shows his love for his sister. Hamlet says, I also loved her. I loved her more than any number of brothers. Claudius and Laertes conspired to kill Hamlet. So as a kind of play, a message was sent to Hamlet to come and have a sword fight with Laertes. And that is the last scene where a wine with poison is prepared, and there is poison to the tips of the swords, and Queen Gertrude, because she was thirsty, she consumes the poison, that wine, and she dies. Meanwhile, Laertes wounds Hamlet and the poison works on him. And Laertes says, Hamlet, I have wounded you because there is poison. While fighting, they exchange the swords and Hamlet wounds Laertes. And when it's understood that King Claudius conspired to kill him, Hamlet goes and stabs him. Like that, all the people die. And Hamlet, at the end of the play, tells Horatio, please tell the people what happened to me, the injustice done to me, my father's death and all that. And he says, the Prince of Norway, Fortinbras, should be made the king of Denmark, because there is no one from the royal family of Denmark. Denmark, Norway and Sweden together constitute what they call Scandinavian countries. So, this is the summary of the The theme is very important. The theme is avenging father's unprepared death. I have already mentioned. The father is not given time to pray and repent for his sins. And it is not the revenge for the denial of the throne. It is more for gross injustice done to his father.
Yes.
And there is, I think, a term for killing one's brother. So, this play is fratricide punished, this punishment of fratricide. So, matricide, patricide, fratricide. So, patricide is killing one's father, matricide is killing one's mother, fratricide is killing one's
brother.
Yes. So, that is the theme of the play.
Yeah.
And this play is more a play of characters. Hamlet's character is the central part of the play. His relationship with other characters, his relationship with his mother, he is angry with her. He loves Ophelia, but later becomes angry with her because she disappoints him by spying on him for her father and the king. So, there is that kind of relationship. Similarly, there is a friend of Hamlet, Horatio.
Horatio, yes.
A very philosophical friend, a very good friend, a special relationship. Polonius, intelligent but foolish prime minister, also spies on Hamlet, which he does not like. So, he teases him a lot. Actually, he calls him a fishmonger. He calls him someone who is letting his daughter on him to collect information. Hamlet pretends as if he is mad, and people get the impression he is mad because Ophelia rejected his love. Ophelia gets advised by her brother and father not to fall in love or not to fall prey to the love of Hamlet, because these kings and princes do not really marry ministers' daughters and all that. So, there is that also angle, kind of spurned love or his hostility to her, because he thinks that she was not being faithful to him. So, Laertes is allowed to go back to Paris to study, but Hamlet is not allowed to go back to Wittenberg to study his philosophy, because King Claudius wanted to keep the prince in the court so that he can keep an eye on him. All these things are very important for the play. And then similarly, Ophelia and her relations with Claudius, Polonius, Hamlet and Gertrude. Claudius is important to note, does not have his own wife, does not have any son. He was most probably interested in Queen Gertrude even earlier. He was interested in the throne. Senior Hamlet spent a lot of time on waging wars. He was not at home most of the time. So,
much like Prospero in the in Tempest.
Yes, and this man Claudius was looking after the kingdom most of the time. So, he thought, after all, I am running the kingdom, why should not I become the king? And I think he was also interested in the queen. So, he wanted to be sure of his kingdom and the queen. So, like this character portrayal becomes very important, and there are two more characters, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, who are used by the king to spy on Hamlet. So, there is spying angle, love angle, murder angle, remarriage angle. Hamlet calls it incestuous sheets. He is really unhappy that Queen Gertrude married his uncle. See, brother-in-law, sister-in-law means they are not brother by blood, but sister by blood is brother-in-law and sister-in-law. So, it becomes a very important point that you cannot marry your sister-in-law.
Yeah, sister-in-law.
Sister-in-law, yeah. So, this is how the character continue our discussion of the characters, there is a concept which I had developed in a paper called the Hamlet Complex.
Yes.
You know, the psychological complexes we have. What is the other? Oedipus complex.
Oedipus complex talks about the natural attraction that the infant, that the son has towards the mother, sexual attraction towards the mother in infancy. But later on, according to this theory of Freud, the son is told that he cannot have a sexual relationship with his mother, and the son learns to divert his attention, sexual attentions from his mother to other women in society. Now, in the case of normal people, the shift happens, the sexual focus shifts from the mother to other women in society. But in some people, the fixation, as it is called in psychology, remains upon the mother, and they cannot accept the mother having a sexual relationship with anybody else. And in Hamlet, it is a little complex because, according to this theory, the father who is able to have, who is allowed to have sex with his mother, with Hamlet's mother, is also seen as a representative of himself. So he has an ambiguous relationship towards his father, where he identifies himself with him and at the same time sees him as a rival.
And there is also something called Electra complex.
Yes, Electra complex is the other side of the thing, where it is said that every daughter feels sexually attracted towards the father, and she is told by society that it is not allowed, and she learns to shift her sexual energies from the father to other men in society who are seen as eligible. Now, these are theories that psychology has developed.
And there is something called Narcissus complex.
Yes, narcissism is the idea that you worship yourself, think of yourself as the most beautiful and or most handsome in the world, and you are self-centered, where you focus everything upon yourself and you become the center of your life, and everybody around you are more or less satellites going around you and are dependent on you in your power, in your gravity. So now, this is narcissism.
Yeah, keeping this kind of tradition of complexes, I have coined this expression, the Hamlet complex, independent of Oedipus complex, Narcissus complex and all that. And the Hamlet complex, I say, has 4 essential ingredients. One is love for the self. It is not love for the body, love for that spirit, divine spirit in your body and in your inner reality, in your inner spirit. Love for the self, righteousness. You think you are good, so you should remain good, you should not do anything wrong. Just because someone said it, you should not kill someone, that kind of righteousness concept. And then fastidious refinement. You want to be refined, and that too very meticulous, no kind of compromises allowed. And the another ingredient is courage for a cause, but cowardice of conscience. This expression comes in the play, conscience makes cowards of us all.
Yes.
It is not physical fear, it is not fear of death, but the conscience here is something fear wrong. You might do something wrong, and that ability to distinguish between good and bad. I would like to say a few words. I quote from Aristotle. Aristotle says, it is right for the good man to be self-loving, because he will thereby himself benefited by performing fine actions. And George Bernard Shaw, that is about self-love. George Bernard Shaw says, men who are superior to vulgar cupidities and ambitions and to vulgar rancorous always do seem weak and cowardly to men who act on them. Because this cowardice is moral fear.
Yes.
We should not do something wrong.
It's a part of the fastidiousness that you have pointed out here.
Exactly.
In the
and another ingredient is reflection and readiness for the inevitable. It's a very peculiar thing. I would like to quote from the play a very interesting statement Hamlet makes. He is clear. If something has to happen, it will happen. There is nothing you can do about it. And there is a beautiful biblical expression, not a sparrow falleth without the heavens knowing it. A similar expression is given here by Shakespeare in the form of the dialogue of comment of Hamlet. There is special providence in the fall of a sparrow. He is told by Horatio, don't accept this invitation to have a sword fight with the Laertes. I suspect something. For that he is answering. There is special providence in the fall of a sparrow. If it be now, it is not to come. If it be not to come, it will be now. If it be not now, yet it will come. The readiness is all.
Yes, sir. Would you look at this as fatalism or stoicism?
It is choice to be ready, but fatalism because providence has already provided for the happenings. So he chooses to be prepared for anything. That's very important. Because he has lost his father, in one sense he has lost his mother to the new king, he has lost Ophelia. And he was not very happy that old Polonius was killed by him. So he is not an extremely happy person. So what is the big deal? He says readiness is all. That's what I meant by readiness for the inevitable. And then ratiocination, always logic. Is this correct? Should I be doing this? Interrogative attitudes. He will not accept anything that just comes your way. So I always bring in homeopathic philosophy. Homeopathy discusses three types of miasms, the basic natures of human beings: soric miasm, psychotic miasm and syphilitic miasm. Syphilitic miasm is the miasm where the person is willing to accept what is given to him. He is a very good follower. Psychotic miasm is the miasm where the person has lots of plans and all that. That will be King Claudius. Polonius is the syphilitic miasm character.
Yes.
Hamlet is soric, asks questions. I remember a doctor of homeopathy said, Swami Vivekananda was clearly soric because he questioned everything. And actually Swami Vivekananda says, don't accept unless you are convinced. That means ask questions. That is the character of Hamlet. He goes on asking questions. Yes, his father's ghost, the ghost gave the appearance of being his father. He was asked by the ghost to avenge his death. Even then he says, no, it may be devil misleading me. Yes. That means he will not accept anything just because someone told him. That is the strength of Hamlet's character.
Yes. In this context, I would like to mention that Ben Jonson wrote a book called The Devil is an Ass, in which he made fun of devils, but ghosts were things that people very seriously believed in. So in Shakespearean times, the ghost had a very concrete reality in spite of all its supposedly spiritual nature, and in the play itself, as we have found out, the ghost is seen as something that is very present, very substantial. And I think from the points that you have raised here, we can say that Shakespeare is not so much interested in the story as in character, that the character is Shakespeare's focus. In Julius Caesar, for example, he wants to see how Brutus, a good man, falls into evil and becomes a bad person. So this is a story that is already known, and he allows the audiences to judge a character rather than simply focus upon the story and ask the question, what happens next? And I think that is one of the reasons why Hamlet itself is a story that was borrowed from other sources and then modified to bring out this aspect of psychology, and which you have pointed out in this very concise term, the Hamlet complex.
Yes. And one of the interesting things is there are soliloquies in most plays, but Hamlet is very rich in this.
Yes.
The whole of Hamlet's character is in his soliloquies, what we say in Indian terms, swagata. He is speaking out. The characters on the stage are not supposed to know what he is saying. That means he is pouring out his soul. And Hamlet, right from the beginning, has been upset. he suspected some foul play. When ghost tells him, he says, this confirms my doubts, my suspicion. So right from the beginning, he had this conscience problem. Right from the beginning, he was saying, what is this? Why should I live? Why shouldn't I die? Later also he says, I am not able to kill my uncle. Why shouldn't I die? Then he says, no. To be or not to be, that is the question. But then he says, the scriptures say, don't kill yourself. This is against God's commandment. And more importantly, very interesting thing he says, what will happen if I die? People say it's a long sleep. Oh, there is the rub. Sleep perchance to dream. So he says if it is long sleep, long plethora of dreams, which he didn't want.
The play is not so much about fighting for the expanse of the kingdom as it is to do the job of a son, which is to avenge his father's death. And if you remember, Hamlet himself says that he could be confined to a nutshell and consider himself the king of a boundless area, but he has bad dreams.